Good morning on this Sunday, December 10th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Georgia lawmakers approved new congressional and legislative maps that now head to federal court for approval. Also, Fulton County voters may be asked to support another sales tax, this time to pay for a new jail. And a big win for Fayette County, which will soon be home to U.S. Soccer's new headquarters and National Training Center. Kathy, Phil, Farron, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
A special session to redraw congressional and legislative districts has come to an end. State lawmakers approved a Republican-favored congressional map that targets the district held by Congresswoman Lucy McBath. Republicans say the plans meet a federal judge's requirement to draw more majority black districts, but Democrats say, see you in court. The Senate voted along party lines, with the Republican majority adopting House and congressional maps over the objection of Democrats. Senate Democrats argued that the legislative and congressional maps drawn up by Republicans do not comply with the federal court order and further dilute the power of black voters.
I can't see him approving their map when it's not what he ordered. It goes against everything that he asked for.
A federal judge ordered Georgia lawmakers to redraw legislative and congressional maps to create new black majority districts after finding the state's current maps violated the Voting Rights Act and discriminated against black voters. Republicans insist the law is on their side and that they have complied with the federal judge's interpretation of the law, even though Republicans don't agree with his ruling.
I think that a lot of time, energy, and effort was put into making sure this complied with the judge's orders. That's what it did, and we look forward to moving forward.
If U.S. District Court Judge Steve Jones rejects the new maps, he could appoint a special master to redraw them for the court. Darren, let's start with you this week and just get your thoughts on what Democrats are saying.
Well, Democrats are basically sort of a message that started off saying, hey, let's make sure that the voters remember the Republicans had an opportunity 2 years ago to draw maps that didn't dilute voting power, black voting power in the state of Georgia. And so then they went into the maps, and then you saw the Senate version, the House version was released. And there was immediate reaction from Democrats, 6 in particular, in the House that was sort of drawing in districts together. And then 2 senators that basically saw their districts, Elena Parent, Jason Esvez, sort of being reshift. And so as the time kind of went on, it kind of went more to like, okay, we're going to fight this. We're going to talk about how the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is really going to be the one thing that they're looking at. And does it protect the coalition districts that you've heard me talk about, these, sort of opportunity districts? And, we talked about that last week, breaking up of communities of interest. You got counties that are now being split. Will that hold up in court? But the fundamental question the Republicans are going to have to answer in this December 20th hearing with Judge Steve Jones is, did you comply with his order? Mm-hmm. Did you make sure that the maps in the districts that he ordered west were those put into these new maps? And then did you make sure that black voting power in this state was not diluted? I think that is going to be really important. And now the Democrats have got to have a strategy after that December 20th hearing, because as you mentioned, Laura, in your package, the special master can be called. And I think a lot of Republicans are willing to run the risk of the court stepping in within the 11th Circuit because they think they have a better shot there.
Martha, is that true?
It may be true, but if you look at the percentage of representation, it did go up in these maps, especially the state and the Senate, the legislative and the Senate maps. They did go up as far, I think, from 31 to 36%.
Black representation.
Black representation went up. So I think they met the guidelines as far as that's concerned. I actually listened to both sides of the arguments, and there were very good arguments on the Republican side, which I agree with. There were some good arguments on the Democrat side too. I think it got a little too vitriolic on that side, because you still have the situation that after the 2022 election, that minority representation did not go down. In fact, it went up, okay? And so from the actual turnout from the voting, there was more minority representation.
Kathy, your thoughts on the new maps?
Well, let's just remember that minority population has been growing dramatically as white population has dropped. So we would expect that we'd start to see the minority population go. I think the thing that we need to watch out for is how they're going to, how the courts are going to decide on the minority opportunity districts. And I don't think that any of this challenge or how these maps are being drawn have been sort of localized right. I think they're part of a bigger picture of how do we eviscerate the Voting Rights Act and what do these certain things mean? So, we'll see. It's evolving.
Just had audible gasps from the Republicans at this
I'm sure.
table. Phil?
I'm sure.
Well, let's put this in perspective just for the viewers. Let's break it down. We're talking about congressional remapping, and just to underscore the fact that the Supreme Court says you can partisan redistrict and do maps. That race is what is the kicker here. So with the congressional maps, there is a new black majority district, like the judge said. It's in Rich McCormick's congressional district. He's a white Republican. They made it 52% black. Fine. Okay. We got the state legislative, the House districts, as I thought last week. Nothing changed, but what did change, and Theron and Kathy don't like this apparently, is that white Democrats were knocked out and blacks were put into the district, so they're still Democrat districts. Too bad. This has been going on for decades in all 50 states with this type of partisan redistricting to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. There's nothing mentioned about these so-called opportunity districts that they're talking about. They're talking about, can we make black majority districts? And I think it's going to go yes to Judge Steve Jones. I don't know what he's going to do, but then it'll be appealed if he says no. It'll go to the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is dominated by Trump-appointed judges. So I'm happy about that.
Either of you want to respond?
But just because you add more black voters in a district, and the Republicans did that. It was a lot of shuffling going on. They gave more elected African-American officials, more black people, and then they actually did some districts, and Kathy's right, we can't localize this, we don't have enough time. But there were some very strong incumbents who got more black voters who were Democrats. But the question they got to answer is, did you reduce the influence and the impact, and did you dilute that black voting power? Just because we have all these new turnout of black voters, and I think Kathy's right, yeah, more black people are voting because more black people are moving to Georgia. We've had over 1 million people of color move to the state in the last 10 years. And the other thing is that this term black voters, this black districts, the term black districts, it's a little pejorative, meaning when Republicans use it in a way to say, well, look, we're giving you these black districts, and and that was the best word I can come up with, is that we got to make sure that they understand that just because you're putting more black people in districts doesn't necessarily mean that you're supporting a minority coalition of coalition districts and districts of influence that, quite frankly, Democrats and Republicans have been able to benefit in winning in these districts. That has got to be the message going forward.
Judge Jones uses this language of putting black voters in.
Well, we'll wait for his decision then. All right, moving on. A feisty GOP presidential debate happened Thursday night in Alabama. 4 candidates took to the stage and held little back, attacking one another. As expected, former President Donald Trump declined the invite. Martha, your takeaways?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting debate. It's down to 4. We finally saw the Chris Christie that we wanted to see, which was, even though I know he doesn't have a chance, I love it when he burns the house down because he just says what he's going to say. My dad was from New Jersey, so I love his style, okay? Then you had Nikki Haley, who I think was right not to respond to every attack to her because who she's trying to get is women voters, and women voters don't like to see the arguing back and forth. So I think she did a good job there. Ron DeSantis finally found his voice on how to not just sound like we did it in Florida, we did it in Florida. He gave examples and then he said, and I've already done it. So he did a good job there. And Vivek Ramaswamy, if you liked him going in, you liked him more. If you didn't like him going in, you like him less. So that's just the way it is.
Did either of the Democrats watch it?
I watched it, and look, what it showed me, and I'll be quick because I know Kathy and Phil may want to say something. This is still a Donald Trump party. This is still a Donald Trump controlled Republican primary party. And so until they can actually tech into his numbers, I think he's going to be nominated.
Phil.
Well, I always like debates, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and you do learn a lot. And Donald Trump is the winner in this debate. I don't care about the 4. They're trying to vie for number 2, and it'll be over probably by February, and I think Trump will be the nominee. The poll numbers are incredibly pro-Trump in Georgia and the 5 swing states that are going to decide the 2024 presidential election. I do think that the theme of Donald Trump, and the others are trying to catch up, Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, always says that he is for the workers. And that's a big theme that you hadn't heard Republican presidential candidates say before Trump came on the scene.
And he did a town hall the day before with Sean Hannity, so it's this kind of parallel events kind of thing that he did. And he was actually pretty good. Now, of course, it was a very friendly audience, and he did a pretty good job. But you're right about the numbers, Phil, and you just got to see, where it goes. It's a 5% path, but I think there's a path.
Kathy.
Well, let me just set the record record straight here. Donald Trump's not for the workers. Just because he says something doesn't mean he means it at all. And I think that, what I'd like to see more of in the GOP debates are the candidates kind of comparing their policies and records to what Donald Trump's record has been, because he's not appearing on the stage, so we don't get to hear that comparison. I won't be voting in that primary, so it's not going to matter much, but it is of interest. And let me just say, I'm also incredibly interested to see what Liz Cheney does as we get into the winter. I don't know if she's going to do anything at all, but I've enjoyed listening to her.
We'll be watching. All right, thanks everyone. Coming up, could a new sales tax pave the way for a new Fulton County jail? It's a possibility we'll discuss after the break.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Fulton County Commissioners are considering a nearly $2 billion proposal to build a new and badly needed jail. For years, reports of horrid and inhumane conditions have plagued the facility. The proposed new jail would triple in size and bed space and be built behind the current jail. Commissioners are trying to decide how best to pay for it. One option could be a new sales tax that would need approval from voters. Kathy, what do you think are the best options when you're looking at a $2 billion price tag?
I don't know that there are many options because the number is really big. I was actually happened to be down when the consultants initially brought their proposals back and talked about what it was going to cost, and everybody had to get a little oxygen to be able to stay there. Doing a sales tax is going to be difficult. We're at about a 9% sales tax already in the city of Atlanta, and that there's little tolerance for that. I do think that it'd be a great time for the Fulton County Development Authority to pack its bags and go home and quit giving away tax dollars, because there might be some way to leverage a little bit of that. But to get $2 billion, you got to do something big.
Martha?
Well, look, I, in general, like sales tax as a way to raise money because it's a lot more accountable. Do you know what I mean? It's not as corruptible because they have to show how much they brought in and how they spent it. My issue with it is that, the jail falls under law enforcement. Courts fall under law enforcement because they have to do that. And we've got a lot of money being spent on things that don't directly impact the safety of the people in Fulton County. And, whether it's Fonnie Willis and the trials that she's doing and the prosecutorial discretion that she took in that. So I think it's probably the only path they're going to have to raise this kind of money, honestly. But it'll be more money for the people of Fulton County, the people that come in. And I don't think it addresses the bigger issue of how they're spending money on law enforcement.
Theron, did you want to weigh in?
No, real quick. I mean, there was also some talk, to your point, Martha, that is one pathway, the sales tax option, but there is an opportunity, there's a conversation about sort of a public-private partnership too, but then it gets into the whole issue, then who's the private company, where is the money coming from? But I think we all can agree, we need a new jail. We need a new jail, and we just got to figure out how to pay for it.
When AJC investigation reports several state lawmakers own part of a tech company that had a no-bid contract with the Fulton County Jail. County commissioners took away a more than $2 million contract from the company Teletrax, which provides wristbands to monitor the health of inmates. Commissioners cited several concerns, including the fact that only about 15 wristbands were in use of the 1,000 promised. Phil, nothing illegal is alleged here, but what about ethics?
Well, that's right. I think that, number one, you need to have transparency. If you're an elected official and a public figure like that, don't keep this stuff secret, even if it's a small investment in a company. I like Sheriff Pat Labata of Fulton County, but I also get nervous whenever I see no-bid contracts, too. And then, as a journalist or just anybody, a taxpayer, you want to know, well, where's the accountability here? So I think I'm glad it came to public light, and this needs to be cleaned up.
All right. Moving on, the quote on the Georgia House floor was you either support public safety officers and law enforcement and law and order, or you don't. An overwhelming majority of Georgia House members voted in favor of the resolution to support the Atlanta Police and Fire Training Facility. The Georgia Senate also passed a similar resolution. Kathy, this vote is mostly symbolic, but lawmakers clearly sent a message to Mayor Andre Dickens offering their support.
Well, they did, but it is very symbolic. I don't think it has any meaning at all. Certainly doesn't have any meaning at all to voters in Atlanta. We all, I think, for the most part, realize we need a new training facility. The question has always been, is the location the right place to do it? And I think that question is sort of water under the bridge at this point.
Phil?
I like symbolic votes. You know why? It exposes people, in this case, that doesn't like the law enforcement training center. Of course, who are they? Liberal Democrats. I'm not going to go down the list.
You know, you taught me in media training, Lori, sometimes use your debate partners' words against them, and that's exactly what the Republicans did by putting this resolution forward. They wanted to expose Democrats. They wanted to force Democrats, who Kathy mentioned. Look, it's an ongoing debate within our party about the public safety training facility. But here's the truth of the matter. It's a local issue. It's a local issue that's got to be worked out on the local level. So now you're asking state legislators to say either you're for public safety or not. So some of these people who voted against it, they have problems with the way it was worded, beyond it being sort of symbolic.
This is a guide to the voters.
No, but I think that I want to say this. Every single person at that state capitol supports public safety. They believe that we need it, and how it's funded and the location of a training facility, that's all debatable. But the Republicans were masterful by putting these two resolutions, one about fighting against terrorism with Hamas, and also whether or not you support the public safety training center or not.
Oh, Martha, what's your take?
Look, it is symbolic. Of course, I agree with everybody on that, but I do think it's good to get people on record on issues like this, because we caused a lot of damage 4 summers ago, and the reason for that was people didn't think police officers were trained and that they had overstepped their boundaries. And then we had the whole defund the police and then move through all these other things. So I think we need this. And you know how I am. They've taken 2 votes on this. They've listened to everybody on this. It's time to move forward on it. That's just where I am on it.
But Phil, a lot of state Democratic lawmakers voted for it.
And God bless them. I just want to know who the ones that are against it.
Because you want them exposed.
And they should be defeated at the polls.
Kathy.
Well, I can't not say anything about this. I would like to see the General Assembly actually have symbolic votes on things that matter. You know, I mean, I'd like to see a vote on Medicaid expansion, like ASAP. That is a huge ticket item for us, and we don't have votes on it. You know, there's
How
lots
about
of
tax cuts? Isn't that a big issue?
Let's have a vote on it. You know, we're not talking about issues that really matter and improve or impact people's lives. We're talking about stuff that, you know, just gets...
So you think the Republicans have no agenda whatsoever? That's crazy.
Well, and I will say...
Well, it's not an agenda that I can quite
Well, I know
parse
that.
out.
But vote on things that you actually have a direct authoritative action over. That's my point. Like Medicaid expansion, I agree with Kathy. Let's talk about that. I think some
they are.
We have been.
But let's...
Well, we've been asking for about 10 years, so, you know, I think we can go a
But
little faster.
you haven't seen a resolution vote to say whether or not you support Medicaid expansion. I think that's a fair question that you can ask every single state legislature in this state.
Well, as you know, they're looking at the gigantic expense of what you're talking
you all
about.
are both proven. They're looking at. My point is, up until this resolution, it has this public safety training center, which I support, is a local issue, and you put Democrats and Republicans on the spot because you wanted to show that you were strong on public safety.
And your party would never, ever do that.
Why would they
Maybe we
need
can get
to?
Representative Beverly to introduce that.
Hey, you should. Yeah.
All
You
right.
should, actually.
Up next, a big win for Fayette County as U.S. Soccer announces the location for its new headquarters and first of its kind national training facility.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Well, Fayette County will soon be home to U.S. Soccer's new headquarters and its first ever national training center. The U.S. Soccer Federation announced the move from Chicago to Georgia earlier this year, but we didn't know the exact location until this week. Kathy, this is big news not only for Fayette County, but really for all of Georgia.
Hey, yeah, I think, you know, the more sports headquarters we can get in Georgia, the better. And this is exciting news for soccer players in particular, and certainly for Fayette County. I mean, I think it, you know, really raises a flag there for corporate relocations, and it's big news, and I'm excited to hear it.
Martha.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. I was one of those kids that was one of 2 or 3 people that would go to a soccer game when I was in high school. I mean, because my best friend's boyfriend was on the team. That's the only reason why we were there. So I love the way the trajectory, the way it's come, and I'm excited about it. I mean, how could you say something bad about something good like that?
You know, the Atlanta United has made Atlanta the center of American soccer, right? I mean, you look at the enthusiasm in the stadiums, and then you look at the parks and kids playing. Hey, I just went and picked up Tyson's soccer jersey. If you guys follow me on Instagram, he was given #1. And so, but what I like about what I saw on television, and Fox 5 reported on this, there are a lot of community concerns, and this organization is addressing those community concerns now.
And
there was a
listening.
forum. The commission is like, bring everybody in, tell us what you want, because we don't want to see a huge debate about the land
Right.
and who's benefiting from this new great sort of thing that's coming to Georgia.
Phil?
Well, I agree with my colleagues, and I just make one last point. This is going to be great for hotels and businesses and economic impact.
Yeah. Well, election run-ups were held this week. One of the highest profile races decided was in the city of Brookhaven. Longtime city council member John Park won the mayor's race against Lauren Kiefer. Theron, I know that you've got ties to Brookhaven. Any surprises here?
Yeah, I mean, big shout out to John Park, who I'm going to quote him, was long and tough race. I mean, and shout out to Lauren Kiefer, who ran a very, very, I think, competitive race. She raised money. But ultimately, John Park has been a really good council member, and I think that the voters made the right choice. And I think what I like is that he's already trying to sort of continue to keep the city united. But it was a big win for him this week.
Phil?
Well, I agree that John Park is a great guy, and I'm glad he won with about 60% of the vote in the runoff. He was against some woke radical that was endorsed by the Democrats, your friend Senator Warnock, and Ossoff, the radical from DeKalb County, Ted Terry. She would have been terrible for Brookhaven, so I'm glad that the mayor got in there.
All right. Well, according to the AJC, the beautiful Talmadge Bridge in Savannah is considered too low for some of the cargo ships that have to get to the port of Savannah. A possible long-term plan could mean building one of the world's tallest bridges or digging a tunnel underneath the Savannah River. Now, either plan is expensive and could cost taxpayers up to $2 billion. There's that number again. Martha, your thoughts?
So I just recently watched the documentary about the old bridge that collapsed, so when this story popped up, I was like, oh my gosh. So look, something's going to have to be done here because we are probably going to be deepening the Savannah port. These ships are going to get bigger and they need to get through. I kind of like the tunnel idea, but it seems like $2 billion is the new million.
It is.
Right? It's like every big project
Everything costs $2 billion. Yes. Theron?
Look, one thing about the Savannah Bridge, and that bridge is a very, beautiful bridge. I mean, you go over it to get over to other parts of Savannah. And so the fact that, look, it's too low, because I like sitting out on River Street and watching the huge cargo ships come in with, a lot of different things there. So I think that, look, you got to raise the bridge, because if it's gonna, if it's too low, great. But then to your point, how much is it going to cost, and how are you going to do it safely? And don't disrupt the cargo, sort of that we need to continue to make sure that this regional economy is booming.
Well, you're making a good point. When you have to raise the bridge. I was talking to some Republican senators the other day. Yes, they do have an agenda. They were just talking about $2 billion for infrastructure. That would just take care of just one bridge. So maybe we better up that.
We have a lot in reserves, but I don't know if we have that much.
That's
Well,
right.
when you have 11 billion reserves,
Right.
it's like I think there's about $50 billion worth of projects out there.
And that's all you hear, Kathy, as well. We got all that in reserves.
Well, I was just glad it wasn't on my desk to decide, because it's a complicated thing. And, as soon as they make any kind of improvement, there'll be some other technology that comes along that needs another improvement. So good luck with that.
Yeah, but this is important to that area. It's important to the state of Georgia because of the port.
And the connectivity, to both sides of that area. You can't forget that. That was one of the problems when they rebuilt it before, is that you don't want to cut off an entire part of an economy, if you do it the wrong way, that's what you'll do.
And we compete so much with other port cities, and so we've got to stay ahead.
But I got confidence in this mayor, Mayor Van Johnson. He watches this show from Savannah. He's going to do the right thing. He's got good relationships with the business community there. So I think Savannah's going to get this together. But you're right, this is a very complicated matter.
Yes, it is. We'll be following and watching. All right, everyone, stay tuned. Winners and losers next.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Martha, we'll start with you.
Well, it's great to be back, and my winner this week is the Ron Clark Academy. We went there with the State Board of Education and took a tour of that school. If you haven't done it, you need to. They have great ideas about education, and they train lots of public school teachers. They're just amazing.
It's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. And then secondly, my loser's going to be, and I haven't done an exhaustive list, but the Democratic groups that I searched, the big ones, that in Georgia have done no recognition on Hanukkah. All the Republican groups have, lots of other groups have, but Georgia Democrats and other county groups have done no recognition of Hanukkah. So I think they're the loser this week, and maybe they'll change that when they hear this. And then some sad news. Jeremy Medina was a baseball player, is a baseball player at Gainesville. He had a traumatic head injury from just a fluke accident that happened. No one was at fault. They have declared him brain dead, and his organs are being harvested, and nature is going to take its course. But he will live on in many people's lives. But his family, his friends, the Gainesville High School community, it was just a horrible time, and I just want to remember them.
Yeah, we're sending prayers to the family and friends. Darren.
I want to thank my team because I did send out a Hanukkah message. So thank you all. Y'all know who you are there for make sure that I got a Hanukkah message out there, because Martha would have hit me in her research. But happy Hanukkah, everyone. Definitely want to make also Winifred Graham. I met her at the Delta Sky Club at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. She's a big friend of the show. And I know we're running out of time, but I just want to congratulate all the people who got elected in East Point, South Fulton. We had a lot of races. We mentioned Brookhaven and other cities around the state.
Great. Phil.
You know, I got a loser. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Eric Dunaway is a loser, along with DA Fonnie Willis. What did they do? They gave these two arsonists who pled guilty to burning down the Wendy's in the summer of 2020 probation and a $500 fine. That's outrageous. You know, that's what people are sick and tired of, these permissive liberal judges and prosecutors that don't do their job.
Kathy.
Thanks, Phil. I just want to give a shout out to my good friend Liz Flowers, who was the executive director of the Georgia Senate Democratic Caucus for years and years and years. I'm so proud of her for taking this step away and seeking blue skies and freedom. And, you know, we'll look to see who steps up to take that hard leadership position. I also want to say my loser is really consumers in Georgia who are facing yet another rate increase from the overruns of Plant Vogtle from Georgia Power. I hope we'll spend some time on the show talking about it, because it's really complex, and you know, you can thank Georgia Power for your $65 a month increase in your bill coming soon.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. And thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you again next week. Bye-bye.